look at our headlines. 7 people are in a critical condition, whereas 6 are in a serious condition after a vehicle drove into a crowd in Los Angeles. The LA Fire Department says the vehicle hit a taco cart before colliding with people outside of a nightclub, with police saying it is too early to know if the incident was intentional. Syrian government forces have deployed in the Druze majority city of Sweda as interim President Ahmed al-Sharaa urges all sides to respect a US-brokered truce with Israel. Sounds of gunfire have been reported in the city as Israel accuses Sharaa of siding with perpetrators. At least 32 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks near Gaza food sites, according to local officials. Reports suggest dozens more have been rushed to the Khan Younis hospital, as the World Food Programme says that thousands are on the verge of catastrophic hunger. US President Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, its owners and Rupert Murdoch over a report linking him to Jeffrey Epstein. Wall Street Journal owner Dow Jones says it stands by its reporting and will defend itself against the defamation claim. Meanwhile, US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has called for Barack Obama to be prosecuted over the 2016 US election won by Donald Trump. Gabbard accuses Obama and former intelligence officials of a treasonous conspiracy on claims of alleged Russian interference. State media in Iran say that 21 people have died after a coach overturned near the town of Kavar. The accident has also injured dozens, according to the Kavar hospital director. South Korea's jailed ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol faces new charges over his 2024 martial law declaration. Prosecutors say he abused authority, erased records, and blocked arrests during the crackdown. And an unidentified drone has reportedly killed a PKK member in Iraq, injuring another in the first attack of this kind in months, according to local officials. It comes after the PKK pledged to lay down their arms and transition into politics. We start this hour in the Middle East, and at least 32 people have reportedly been killed by Israeli fire while heading towards an aid distribution site in Gaza. This is according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry and the Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis. The Israeli military said it fired warning shots at individuals who approached its troops and ignored calls to stop roughly a kilometre away from a distribution point that it said was inactive at the time. But residents at the scene dispute that account, claiming no warning shots were fired before live rounds were used. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which operates the aid sites, said there were no incidents or fatalities at its location. It also noted that people had been repeatedly warned not to travel to distribution points after dark. The Israeli military has said that it is reviewing this incident. Fatalities near aid sites have become a regular occurrence in Gaza. That according, of course, to local reports. Let's join now our guest, Eric Woolberg, who is a political analyst, joining us from Toronto. Eric, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. Further reports of casualties around aid sites. What's your initial thoughts upon these revelations from the Gaza-run health ministry and hospital officials?
Well, it's just continuing Israel's slow destruction of the Palestinians. Its goal is to really rid all of so-called Israel of its Palestinians, the natives that live there. So the latest casualties are just a continuation of what's been happening on a daily basis for months now, of basically trying to make the Palestinians see that they cannot stay. It's either leave or die. That seems to be the two choices and Trump is backing this as well. So we can't expect really a sea change in that policy. Fortunately, there are countries with a conscience that are organizing. The recent coalition of mostly BRICS members have been trying to promote the use of all of their initiative, which would be basically boycotting Israel and trying to arrest IDF soldiers and also officials. For instance, if Netanyahu visits Colombia, it's very unlikely he would be arrested.
Yes.
So these.
Eric, sorry to interject. I'm conscious of how much time we have, and I do want to touch on one point before we move on. Of course, questions have been raised by NGOs and charities as well as organisations like the United Nations about these Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid sites. Do you think that there should be more onus and more importance put on resolving this issue of aid amidst calls of further humanitarian crises surrounding hunger? While we wait for Eric to come back on, of course, this reported incident, we have to clarify, this is reported by Gaza-run health ministry officials, but this comes after the UN in recent days spoke about hundreds of reported deaths around these aid sites, with a large proportion of those at aid sites run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This organisation, of course, US-backed and has been the subject of questions relating to the safety of people. But to provide some further context, Israel have been saying consistently following the resumption of aid after a blockade lasting months, that their fear is aid getting into the hands of Hamas, which of course will continue, according to Israel, will continue Hamas's ability to stave off Israeli attacks and continue this war that has seen potentially tens of thousands of civilian deaths in Gaza. Of course, around 50 hostages taken in those tragic October 7th, 2023 attacks carried out by Hamas, still being held, both dead and alive hostages being held by Hamas. The backdrop of all of this is a continuation, of course, around dialogue towards a potential ceasefire. Optimism coming from Israel and the United States, with ongoing discussions being held in Doha, Qatar, but there are some key sticking points. We are going to move on now, and we will, of course, continue to bring you all of the updates that we get from Gaza. Well, we do stay in the Middle East, and Syrian government is urging respect for a shaky truce deal in the Druze region. This despite a ceasefire announcement, with clashes reportedly continuing in Sweden, where hundreds have so far died. Syrian forces are deploying to enforce the truce, but gunfire is still potentially echoing in the city. Well, this comes as the European Union welcomed the US-brokered ceasefire between Syria and Israel. It calls for protection of all civilians and urges accountability for violations of international law during the recent violence. Meanwhile, Israel warns it remains very dangerous to be a minority in interim President Ahmed al-Shara's Syria. Israeli officials criticise Shara's government for failing to protect minorities amid ongoing sectarian clashes. The violence in Sweden has drawn in Israel, Syria's Islamist government and local factions. The fragile ceasefire faces serious challenges, with regional tensions and sectarian violence persisting. Authorities continue monitoring the situation closely. Well, we are once again joined by Eric Woolberg. Eric, thank you very much for rejoining us. There are, of course, points of optimism. The EU speaking about this US-brokered Israel-Syria ceasefire. However, we have had reports of further gunfire being heard in Sweden. We've heard that Syrian forces, Syrian government forces, are returning to Sweden with instability still at play. Do you think that this truce, this ceasefire deal between Israel and Syria, has any real possibility of holding firm with sectarian violence still clearly at play?
No, it's not going to hold, and the situation in Syria is a disaster, and it's really Israel is the cause of all of it. It undermined Saddam, it undermined Bashar Assad, weakened to the point where with the bombings, constant bombings, and support for Al Qaeda, Israel, its goal is to dismember Syria and basically control the southern half itself. Its whole policy in the Middle East is to divide and conquer, to keep Arabs disunited, fighting among themselves so that they can't fight Israel. And from Israel's point of view, that's a perfectly good policy, but from everyone else's point of view, it's a disaster because you have constant civil war. And that's the situation in Syria now. There's so many different factions that were held together under a united government under Bashar Assad. It was not a nice government. It was cruel, but it was holding the country together. Now Al Qaeda is in control, and you've got members of the government are from Uyghur, from Turkestan, East Turkestan, from China. You've got from Uzbekistan. There's quite a few. And these are hardened Al Qaeda jihadists. And now Israel, it's kind of regretting it, saying, oh, well, we don't want these people in your government. And so it's basically trying to control the whole makeup of the government. And it's bombing, it's continuing to bomb Damascus. So nothing good is going to happen, really, in Syria. I think it's going to be a constant civil war and strife for at least a year or two until some kind of resolution of Gaza and Palestine. Really, we're waiting for a sensible U.S. policy, which is not in the works now. So really, as long as Trump's in power, I think Syria is going to be a disaster and will be undermined and controlled. Basically, it will be divided. It's already Turkey in the north, Israel in the south, and I don't know what. Now Israel is threatening to invade Lebanon and make it part of a greater Syria. So if that's the case, then Israel really is intending to control all of Syria. It will probably
Eric, we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you ever so much for providing that insight there. We will, of course, continue to bring you all the developments from the Middle East as tensions continue to move forward. But we now head to North America, and according to reports, 7 victims are in a critical condition, with 6 in a serious condition and 10 people with minor injuries after a vehicle has driven into a crowd outside a nightclub on Santa Monica Boulevard in Los Angeles. The accident occurred early morning and has left dozens of people injured. Firefighters responded quickly with 124 personnel on the scene, assisting in triage and transport. Authorities discovered a gunshot wound on one of the injured, possibly the driver. Police have cordoned off the area, but the cause and driver's identity still remain unknown. Meanwhile, investigations are ongoing. Captain Adam Vangerpen, Public Information Officer for the LA City Fire Department, described the chaotic scene. Let's have a listen.
This morning at 2 a.m. in Los Angeles, our firefighters were dispatched out to a traffic accident. On arrival, they found a large group of people standing outside of a club. There's a taco truck there, and apparently a vehicle had driven through the taco truck, through the valet, and into the crowd. So when our firefighters arrived on scene, they quickly called for additional resources. So we had a total of 124 firefighters were here on scene. There's about 25 LAPD officers that came out to assist us. So the scene when they arrived was very chaotic. Ultimately, there ended up being a total of 30 patients. So out of those 30 patients, 7 of them were critical, what we call immediate. 6 of them were delayed, and then another 10 were transported in minor condition. So out of that, we also had another 7 that were minor that signed out. So a total of 30.
Well, an extremely concerning situation. I must say that there is currently limited information, but we are joined by Ross Feingold, a political analyst who's joining us from Taipei, Taiwan, to dissect what we do know so far and potentially look forward. Ross, as always, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. LAPD police saying that this situation is fresh. It's still unknown whether it was intentional. Reports that we've had a car going into a taco stand and then hitting people that were standing outside of a nightclub. Speculation, of course, at this point is there. We will try to avoid that. But given the potential casualty list that we're seeing, at least of severely and critically injured, this is a dark night for LA.
Certainly, and the authorities are still on the scene. This is a very much still an unfolding story. You know, and as you indicated, when something like this happens in a large urban area, at a place where there's a large crowd, there's going to be a need to investigate whether or not this was an accident or an intentional ramming. Unfortunately, there's been so many intentional ramming events in Europe as well as in the United States and other places around the world that it's something that the authorities do have to investigate and ascertain what was the driver's motivations. Was it intentional? Was it an accident? If it was an accident, what caused the accident? Was it a health issue with the driver, or was it a mechanical issue with the vehicle?
Yes, absolutely. And Ross, of course, you alluded to those recent car ramming attacks that we've seen in Munich, nearby to the defence summit that was taking place there. Of course, also in New Orleans, at the start of the year, another car ramming attack. With a situation like this, with investigations still ongoing, how important is it that members of the public and people online wait for those investigations to take place before jumping to conclusions? Because this, let's be honest, can be a murky topic that could potentially have wider ramifications.
And that's a very good point. And a lot of the burden falls on public officials. It falls on the first responders, the police, the fire agencies, the emergency medical technicians who were first on the scene, the doctors at the trauma centers where the victims were sent, and of course the politicians. And the moment you start talking about politicians needing to take leadership in a situation like this, there's always going to be another politician who is quick to criticize. We're in such a highly partisan situation in the United States that partisan criticism, it happens, unfortunately, when there are situations like natural disasters, other types of accidents, or potentially even terrorist attacks like this. So again, we have to emphasize we don't know the cause of this incident. But no matter what the kind of incident is, when there's a mass casualty event in the United States, unfortunately, it does very quickly but often become partisan as well.
Yes, absolutely. Ross, you will be staying with us. And of course, here on NewsX World, we will continue to bring you all of the updates as they happen relating to this LA car ramming incident. But we stay now in North America. And US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has accused former President Barack Obama and top members of his administration of orchestrating a treasonous conspiracy to undermine Donald Trump's 2016 election victory. Gabbard released newly declassified documents claiming Obama's national security team politicized intelligence on Russian interference to discredit Trump. She named many prominent Obama-era officials, including James Clapper, John Brennan and James Comey, and called for a full criminal investigation. According to the report, intelligence before and after the election suggested Russia likely wasn't trying to alter the outcome through cyber means. The report also claims that following a White House meeting in December, Obama officials shifted their public messaging by relying on still unverified intelligence to suggest that Russian interference had affected the election's results. American intelligence agencies and bipartisan probes have found no evidence that votes were changed or intelligence was fabricated. Well, Ross, thank you for staying with us. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, making some very strong statements here relating to Barack Obama and his top officials. Of course, at the 2016 election, the 2020 election, we know what happened with the Capitol riots as well. Is the American political system, the voting system, and politics as a whole being thrown into murky water here, given these allegations that have been made, given what we saw in those Capitol riots? Where is this placing American politics and trust amongst American politics?
It's pretty clear that for a long time to come, Americans, regardless of which side they are of the political divide they are on, they're going to be litigating and relitigating the 2016 and 2020 elections. We have a change of administrations. We went from Obama, who ended in January 2017, to 4 years of a Trump administration, to 4 years of a Biden administration, now back to 4 years of a Trump administration. And it's clear that the senior leadership in these different administrations are going to put a very different color on what transpired in their predecessors' administration, both for domestic policy as well as for foreign policy. And one of the most heated topics of discussion is the 2016 and 2020 election. I think we're going to continue to see the Trump administration conduct investigations of the 2016 and 2020 election. There's been referrals from the intelligence community to the Justice Department for a possible criminal prosecution of Obama-era officials as well. That might happen with Biden-era officials going forward. I think we're just at the start of a very long path here when it comes to litigating and relitigating what transpired in 2016 and 2020. And there's this core question of what did Russia do or not do to interfere in the 2016 election, which clearly people have a very different view on.
Yes, of course, and there are polarising views on both sides of the political spectrum in America. But Ross, I want to look specifically now at what Tulsi Gabbard has said. In your opinion, is this a reach, or could there be a real criminal prosecution against Barack Obama and his top officials? And what ramifications could that have moving forward towards potentially the end of Trump's term and a blight maybe on the Democrat Party?
There's been talk about criminal prosecutions. I think it's still very early days in that process. Again, it's been referred to the Justice Department. I mean, the Justice Department would have to find evidence of an actual crime. Partisanship is not a crime. Even, unfortunately, incompetence is not necessarily a crime either. But some of these issues have been looked at multiple times, again, across the past few administrations. There's also been an independent, what we call in America, Inspector General reports of some of these issues, which did not find reason for criminal charges. There was also a bipartisan report issued by the Senate Intelligence Committee in August of 2020. Ironically, the acting chairman of the Intelligence Committee at the time was Senator Marco Rubio, who's now the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. And that report from the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee did determine that Russia tried to interfere in the 2016 election and to sow division among Americans with the goal of helping President Trump win. Now, they didn't find that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia, but they did find that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. So I think it's been established that Russia did that. Again, other issues like partisanship or incompetence might be something that the Trump administration will focus on going forward with regard to those investigations. But finding evidence of criminal behavior is going to be very difficult.
Ross Feingold, as always, thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us on those important matters. We will continue to bring you developments after those comments from Tulsi Gabbard. But we now head back to the Middle East region, and at least 21 people have been killed and 29 others injured after a coach overturned in southern Iran. The accident occurred near the town of Kavar, located around 1,000 kilometres from Iran's capital, Tehran. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. Images from the scene show the coach lying on its side along a mountain road. Iran has long struggled with poor road safety, with nearly 20,000 traffic-related deaths reported in the past year. The deadly crash highlights ongoing concerns over road safety in the country. Well, joining us to briefly discuss this tragic incident, Shruti Dasgupta, international affairs expert, who is joining us from New Delhi. Shruti, thank you ever so much for taking the time to be here with us. This moment, of course, is tragic, further deaths, but we gave you a figure of around 20,000 deaths there. Do you think that this potentially should be a wake-up call for the administration in Iran to act and try and look at road safety with so many incidents like this tragedy?
Iran, greetings, Joshua. Thank you for inviting me. Iran suffers from sanctions for many, many decades now, and that has led to at least a very high figure, close to 38 to 43 predicted now for 2025, inflation. So cost of living is very high. There is obviously a lot of pressure on people to make every dollar, every penny count, and make it stretch as far as possible. So this has led to poor maintenance of the fleet. Almost about 80% of its fleet is more than 15 years old, and many buses suffer from technical failures and malfunctions, and it all works on as much as maintenance, as little as maintenance as they can, to make most of the opportunity to drive it. Even the drivers are very poorly paid, and they are all overworked. So this leads to a lot of road accidents and hazardous driving, and beyond that, there is a lack of safety regulation that is also a part of this large number, 20,000 deaths every year. That means that a large number of people driving vehicles on the road do not adhere to safety standards and rules that are set internationally otherwise. So a lot of these things feature, and they show that Iran is not able to keep up with the modern times, and that has led to a death of a lot of Iranians, unfortunately.
Yes, Shruti Dasgupta, we are unfortunately out of time, but thank you ever so much for that insight. That is all that we have time for, but we will continue to be back with more of your latest